Welcome to episode 4 of the Veteran to Veteran podcast. I'm your host, Cole, and today's guest we have Derrick Turner. He's a United States Marine Corps veteran, as well as he actively is serving in the Army National Guard, and he's a veteran business owner. He owns Bear Arms gun store in Noblesville, Indiana, and he also owns or runs the Fox Prairie gun range out just south of Cicero, Indiana. As far as covering technical issues throughout the episode, there's not really any technical issues. You hear some background noises. He has a very loyal customer base, and so his phones are getting blown up a few times in the podcast, and we get a little distracted by people walking up to his door just to realize that the business is closed for the day, and then you hear his kids playing in the background. Because it's a family-friendly business, and he brings his kids to his store all the time, as well as his dogs. But about the conversation itself, we focus really like half of the podcast, and this is the longest one to date. We focus about half of it on his military service and service of various types. He was also a law enforcement officer, a SWAT officer. He was a government contractor. He's done a lot of things, and he and his family are incredibly generous and just great people. And I myself I'm more willing to drive like 25 minutes out of my way to go buy from and support his store rather than shopping at some of the bigger commercial entities that are closer to me as far as gun stores and shooting ranges and stuff. I would rather support their smaller family-run business than anything else. Again, I'm trying to not use a script, so I really am just kind of following some mental notes in my head that I want to try and keep the podcast on track, but I'm not trying that hard to keep the podcast on track in this one. I kind of wanted to see where it would go if we just kind of had a conversation, and so because of that, we steered off and went down some rabbit holes pretty deep on some random topics, but all in all, it was a really fun podcast. We ended the podcast like 4 times and then just kept talking. So yeah, I don't know. It was a fun podcast to make. I had a really good time. I'm really happy that Derrick was willing to be on as guest number 4, and I really, as much as I want to get as many guests on this podcast as I can, I'm happy and hopeful that maybe this podcast might be able to help some of his customers or future customers get an idea of who he is as a person and as a father, a husband, a business owner, and everything in between, and veteran. And hopefully it helps his business as much as it helps my my podcast grow, and we're kind of like trying to help each other with this. So again, I'm really thankful that Derrick was willing to come out, and I'm thankful for everything that he and his wife Melissa have done for me, even though it's like little things like giving me little discounts here and there or giving me access to the range for me to be a safety officer for them. I love that, and they're great people. So if you're in the area, check out Bear Arms LLC, the gun store in Noblesville, Indiana. And yeah, without further ado, here it is, Sergeant Derrick Turner. Let's see, episode 4, Veteran to Veteran podcast. Derrick Turner, thanks for being on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to get this thing going, get some momentum. It's going to be nice when I can actually have people reaching out to me to be on it. Yes. If I get it big enough, instead of me having to search and hunt down so many people. But real quick, just for the people at home, I don't know any of this stuff either, because our relationship has been
surrounded by
friendly but professional
deliveries and
yeah. But yeah, if you want to talk about kind of your upbringing, like where you grew up, and then since this is a podcast that focuses mostly on service, but still want to hear all the details, background about your life and stuff. Yeah, your upbringing, and then what led you into the military, and if you had any influences like family or friends that you looked up to that led you down that path.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a small town called Markleville, which is like 20 minutes east of here. Went to Pendleton Heights High School. Graduated in '03. I came from a family of three. I was the only boy. Dad was never in the military. My mom's side had three vets. My grandpa was a World War II vet. He was a Marine. My oldest uncle was also a Marine who was an MP. And then I had an uncle that was an '04 lieutenant commander in the Navy. And on my dad's side, my grandpa was a newly minted airman in the newly minted Air Force. But other than my Uncle Mike and my Uncle Mark, who the Marine and the Navy on my mom's side, I didn't really hear much about my grandpa in the Air Force. As far as he never talked about it. It's not like he had any PTSD or anything like that. He was an engine mechanic, but he just never talked about it. He just never talked about being in. But I always saw my two uncles' uniforms at my other grandparents' house like all the time, and I was just enamored with them. I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then the mystique of the Marine Corps was certainly alluring. But growing up, I was a complete knucklehead, complete idiot as a kid. Caused my dad a lot of heartburn growing up. I was a three-sport athlete. Did the college thing after I graduated. Did that for 2 years at a small school in Richmond, IU East. I played basketball and decided I didn't want to go to college anymore after 2 years. And I decided I didn't want a job. So I did the next best thing and signed up for the Marine Corps because that makes logical sense, right? So I talked to my Uncle Mike about it, and he basically said, hey, it'll be one of the best decisions you make, but don't get caught up in the romance of the rifle. He said there'll be parts that'll absolutely suck. Make sure you get what job you want. And my parents thought for sure after talking to him that I wasn't going to join at all. And I came back that evening and said I'm going to sign up. So I signed the contract in December and left for boot camp in March. And born a Marine on June 9th, 2006, man.
June 9th, 2006.
Yeah.
That's probably a really good time to get into the Marine Corps.
It was in, like, the throes of the war, as it were. And boot camp sucked. But I was too young and stupid to realize how bad it sucked. Like, if I had to go do that now, bro, like things hurt in the morning now, and but then you're just so stupid. You're made of rubber, right? Because I was a little bit older than some of the guys who were 17, 18 years old, but I turned 21 in boot camp, and I didn't tell anybody. I just wanted to blend in and not get in trouble, because you're getting yelled at for everything, bro. And but it was a great experience. Looking back on it,
yeah.
And it's definitely one of those situations from day one, really, from boot camp to the moment you EAS. Misery loves company, and when you look back on it, you're like, man, I really miss those group of guys that I was hanging out with. But I was ready to get out after 6 years.
6 years. So if I can math well, like 2011.
Yeah, 2012.
2012?
2012, yep. I extended for 1 year. I tried to crack into OCS to be an officer, and they rejected me, and I think it's because I had too many credits at the time. I was pretty close to graduating, and I don't think they wanted to pay to send me back to college when I was close to graduating. But the problem is the Marine Corps never tells you why they say no. They just say no.
Well, and it's always, like, subjective, too. Like, one person might look at it and be like, no, we're not going to do that. But if your packet had landed on the next person's desk or something, then they probably would have not cared and just signed off on it.
Yeah, for sure. But it worked out for the best. It was like God had a plan. So
yeah, well,
now I'm here, and this place is a wild ride. So my Marine Corps career was kind of quiet, really. I mean, I didn't deploy as a Marine. I was a corrections guy and did military police, and I started at Camp Pendleton, and there was always rumors that we were going to go, but they never deployed us. And then by the time I PCS to Quantico, nobody ever deploys out of Quantico. There are very, very few jobs that leave that place to go overseas. But I did meet a ton of connections that set me up for later in life. My time there at Quantico, from '08 through 2012. Do you remember all the recruiting shops shootings that were going on, and like between '09 and 2011? Do you remember that at all? Like recruiting shops were getting shot up by those like the domestic terrorists driving around. So that was happening close. That happened in Manassas, just north of where Quantico was, and then they also took some shots at the Marine Corps Museum. So the National Museum of the Marine Corps is legitimately across the street from Marine Corps Base Quantico, and it is a shared jurisdiction with us in Prince William County. So our colonel at the time was a great dude. Bob Altman was his name. Was an infantry guy, and the command deemed that he needed somebody to be with him for PSD or whatever they wanted to call it. Basically, it just turned out to be his driver is what it was, right? So they had a board, right? Because anything you do in the Marine Corps, you have to have a board. I knew nothing, dude. I had only shot a handgun a couple of times, right? I knew nothing about PSD, but I ran fast and I was in shape and I looked good in uniform, which in the Marine Corps, like if you have that, you're 95% of the way there, right? As long as you don't like have a dead girl or a live boy in your trunk, like you've made it, okay? So, but that was a great, because I learned so much about leadership from that guy and one-on-one conversations from Bob. It was only supposed to be a 6-month stint, and I stayed for 2 years. His entire tenure that he was there.
Must have liked you.
Yeah, I must have not done something wrong. So, but anyway, just watching him and how he interacted with conversations and just his demeanor and even him as a family man had a huge impact on me and helped me out later in life. But I got out of the Marine Corps, finished my bachelor's degree, became a cop, got lucky and got a slot to try out for the SWAT team, so I did that, made it, and then got lucky again and a guy ended up leaving, and I ended up going to my first sniper school, and I was able to become we had a full-time SWAT team, but I ended up being the sniper team lead for our team, which was probably one of the greatest jobs I ever had, and that is when I really started to pick up momentum as far as experience went, because other than that, it was just 6 years in the Marine Corps. Great, you got a college degree. But that's when, being in the Northern Virginia area, there's so many federal alphabets there. And we had great range venues. Then everybody wanted to come and play, and everybody wanted to come and train. So I was going to school after school after school after school. And I ended up going to 4 or 5 different sniper schools. I went to a couple of different SWAT schools. Went to a couple team lead. Is that going to be annoying?
No, I was just...
Okay. No, I don't need to get that. No, I'm closed, bro. But that's where I got my experience, and then that's I came in contact. It always seemed like, whether I was in the Marine Corps or even up through contract work, like God always put really cool dudes in my way that were better than me and smarter than me and taught me the right things right off the bat. Like I never had a guy that didn't know what he was talking about that was put in front of me, when I was super fortunate, because by the time I got to the contract world and did go overseas, I was just a Marine SWAT cop. That was it, right? I had a little bit of sniper experience, but when I got over there, I was over there with SF guys. There were MARSOC dudes. I was on a very small contract with 50 people.
Very experienced.
Yeah, right? Like
guys.
combat-hardened, like Rangers, right? And then there was me. And I always felt like, it was like, no one had ever said it, but it was like, how did you get on this contract again? Like, what is it you did? But those were some of the best group of dudes I ever worked with over there on contract. I did that for a short time. Wife was tired of being a single parent of 4 kids, because I got 4 kids, ages 11 to 6. One is about to knock your camera over. And then this store came up for sale. And we jumped at it, we bought it. We've made huge strides and huge improvements. Met guys like you, and being a veteran-owned business, don't do that. Made a veteran-owned business, and it just attracted more and more vets. And the coolest thing is that this place is like a barbershop, but with guns, bro.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of to have guys come in, and they'll say, oh, what's rancher service were you in? So you're a vet. And you start talking, and we've had guys reunite with other people before because they were in similar units at a similar time, and they just happen to cross paths. And it could have been just as something as, hey, I went to a 2-week MOS school, or, just in passing, and guys will reconnect again, and that's pretty special.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that you have really capitalized on, and I think it's just like a testament to your personality and character and just who you are, is like, this is a relatively small gun store, right? It's not out on the highway. It's kind of tucked right off the highway, and I feel like, I was delivering here when I was working for FedEx before you bought it, and I kind of got to see that transition, and it was like empty most of the time.
Yeah.
And the people that were in here were just kind of browsing, and there wasn't conversation. And like you said, the kind of barbershop comparison, it is like that now, where it's people are having conversations all the way over the store, and I think you guys have just really done a really good job with like customer service and giving like a real, like, it's a family-owned business.
Yeah.
And it feels like it is. And I think, and me and Joe were talking about that the other day, and I was hanging out here because that's what I do. That's the kind of atmosphere that you provided. I'll just get done at work and just come over here and hang out for 2 hours. I won't buy anything. I'll just hang out. But we're talking about you and Melissa, and just like, when you see a family-owned business that handles their customers the way that you guys do, you just like, and are as good of people as you guys are, you just want them to succeed. So it's like, besides the customer service experience that you're going to get when you come in here to Bear Arms, it's like just you want to support you guys rather than, I won't name any other gun store names, but
I don't know of any other gun stores besides ours.
I'd rather, like, there's more gun stores closer to me, and this is like a 25-minute drive. I would rather drive 25 minutes here to help support your guys' business than I would go to Cabela's or some other big commercial company. And I think it is just the way that you guys conduct yourselves as a family. And like, you got your kids in the store, you'll have your dogs in the store.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, there's something about that atmosphere that you've created. And then something that I noticed early on was like, it was like my second or third time coming in here to deliver, and we had chit-chatted a little bit, but you would be in the middle of a conversation, and you would stop in the middle of the conversation and point out, like, what's going on, Cole? It's like, that guy remembered my name. Like, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep coming back here. And, you guys have just done little bits of things that I think have added up, and now it's like, I'll be in here hanging out, and countless people will come in and out, and you'll stop and say hi to every single person that comes in, and a lot of them, their names, and
Yeah, I mean,
you got a lot of returning customers. You got a loyal customer base now.
Yeah, for sure. When we first bought this place, I mean, the guy previous was not known for his customer service, but nicely. But once we started to gain momentum, and there's, like you said, there's regular dudes that come in, and I appreciate, how you characterize this, because that means a lot to me, and that means a lot to Melissa, because we work a ton of freaking hours, bro, all the time.
Well, that's what Joe had said. He didn't take a day off for a long time.
No, man. For 11 years, I worked for the federal government in some capacity, and this is the most I've ever worked, hands down, right? Yeah, right. And but this place is like Cheers almost, right? So I may not remember everybody's name, but I know faces, and I remember things that you buy for some reason. I just
That's
like
what he said,
Rain
too.
Man.
You might not remember somebody.
I'll walk in and I'll be like, Glock 26, how's it working out for you, right? And but people appreciate that. But again, it's life lessons that you learn when you're in the military. Sometimes you learn more from bad leadership than you do good. Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It seems like there's more bad leadership than there is good. And I'm just going to say it and put it out there. The best leaders I ever had were all prior enlisted, aside from one. But when you're humble enough to, one, never stop learning. That was one of the first things that I caught on to from all the guys that were in front of me. They never stopped learning, and they never acted like they knew anything or knew everything, right? So it was, I may not know that direct answer, but I'll go find it, or I'll know where to find it, right? And that was a very valuable mindset to always keep training, to keep getting better, and just know that you may not know everything, man. So one of the things I picked up on was never say never, and there's never any only. So I never say it will never happen, because it will, and there's never only one way to do something. I mean, you always hear that, keep it as a tool for your toolbox, right? So I've been to a ton of cop courses before, and not always would it be a technique that I would say, yeah, I'm going to use that 90% of the time. But I've been in a couple of spots where it's, for some reason, I'm in a particular situation, and then that one crazy technique or that one little verbal judo thing that I heard from somebody actually came into play, and it was the perfect piece for that puzzle at that point in time. So, but translating into customer service, I don't know everything. There's some guns in here that I can speak to really, really well. There's other guns in here I don't know a thing about, bro. You know what I mean? Other than point it that way. But telling people that up front, and they appreciate that, right? I've been in the gun stores. I don't know what it is about the gun community as a whole, but there's a ton of ego, man. And you could go into, it doesn't matter where you go. Used to be Gander Mountain, where, down in Virginia where we lived. But you go into a gun store, and you could just feel the haughtiness of it. Like,
it feels like a gym.
Yeah, it's like, let me tell you what you need, right? Like, no, I'm actually here just for a Kydex dip holster, but sure, go ahead and tell me why I need a revolver over a semi-automatic, or why plastic guns suck. But you don't get any of that here, man. Like, it's all shooter preference. If you ask for my opinion, I'll give it to you, but that doesn't make it right. Like, so I say this all the time, and I can hear my wife's eyes rolling when I say it, but handguns are like pickup trucks, man. They all do pickup truck things. It just depends on what brand you're into, right? So just because I happen to be a Glock fanboy doesn't mean that it is the best, right? That's why not every truck's a Chevy, because everybody's got different preferences, everybody's got a different budget, but at the end of the day, they're all going to do the same thing. Maybe not for the same longevity, right? But it's about what fits the person's needs, and I think as a retail space, gun stores really, really suck at that sometimes. And it's also pretty intimate, right? So it's an intimate decision. I mean, you just listen to folks that come in here and they're like, hey, I've been in the gun world for like 25 years, but I remember the one time I went down to the creek and shot with my grandpa. You hear those stories all the time. Think about how big of an impact that is on somebody's life, where they go somewhere with a family member and it's just the one time that they've ever shot something. But for 25 years, that's a memory. That's a pretty big deal, man. And now, because of the environment that we're in with the Rona and then BLM burning everything down, a lot of first-time gun owners are coming in. And you hear those stories over and over again. I just feel like I haven't done this in forever. I just feel like it's time. And it's incredible. You see the vulnerability in folks where they, for one reason, and they don't need to feel this way, but they just like, I've been into guns, and now I feel like I need to get into something like this to protect my property or family or whatever it is, or recreation, but I don't know anything about it, right? That takes a lot of courage to come into a gun store and admit, like, I don't know anything, I'm at your mercy, and then try not to be taken advantage of, right?
Yeah, I had a guy just the other day call me, and this guy I used to work with, but I guess he was never really into guns and went to my dad, and then my dad redirected him to me, and he was like, hey, I got like a 300-foot property line basically, and I'm trying to build an AR. Mm-hmm. I'm going through this gun store, and he's just letting me tell him what I want. And it was like, I just want a home defense AR-15 setup. And it's like, well, like, I have my own preferences, but like I say, like, personal preference prevails, like, hands down in the marksmanship world. That's what it all comes down to. And what works for me might not work for you, but I've used enough other stuff to know what I like. So I don't want to tell you to go get a $500 EOTech and then you don't like it or something, Yeah. But it's like, I can just show you what I like. But he was like really deep in the weeds on, like, barrel twists.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, at 100 yards, I don't know how much a barrel twist is going to
matter.
And if you're shooting a 5.56 or 2.23, yeah, you could have a heavier bullet compared to a lighter bullet, but at 100 yards, a 2.23 is going to do what a 2.23 does. And I was like, I would be more worried about all the other barrel lengths and all that stuff. But I just on what you're just speaking about, I had that same experience just the other day. But you have to deal with that on a daily basis.
Oh yeah.
So have you ever read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?
No, but I've heard of it.
So I've read about half of it, and that seems to be the most reoccurring lesson that he's trying to get across, is something that you seem to just have picked up on naturally, and that's remembering things about people. That will, the title of that book sounds kind of bad, like in intent, like trying to win friends and influence people, but for business, making good business relationships and returning customers and stuff, when they feel like you know them, a guy tells you about his wife and just offhanded something about his wife, and he mentions her name, and then the next time he comes in, you ask how his wife's doing by name.
Oh yeah.
That guy's going to remember that. And that's like, he talks about a lot of techniques. Now, I'm terrible with names. Absolutely awful. I've been here and talked to Joe 10 times, and I still just had to ask you what his name was. And I've just hit my head a few too many times, I think. But that's something that I really need to work on. And he says, like, he will meet somebody, shake hands with them, and then he would actually go to his office or off to the side, and he would have a notebook, and he would write down things about him. What did he say? What his name is? His kids' names, and he would record all this stuff, and then he would use flashcards and memorize stuff, and that built great business opportunities later on in life for him, because they really appreciate that.
Oh yeah, that was when I was in high school. We had a assistant baseball coach who was he was a younger kid. I say that now because I'm 35, but at the time I was 18. He's 25 years old, but he was a pharmaceutical rep, as what his full-time job was. But he did exactly that. Anytime he went to a doctor's office, he took notes of the front desk lady, of the nurses, and the doctor, whoever it was that he was talking to, but there were personal data points. And then he would take that back, put it in his laptop, label it that office, and before he stepped into that office again, he'd pull it up, refresh himself, and then he'd go in. And that dude killed it, bro. Like, he was 25, single, making sweet pharmaceutical sales money, right?
I think one thing I need to be better at that he just mentions, a little thing, is like when you shake somebody's hand and they tell you their name, repeat their name back to them. Yeah. Like, make sure that you heard them and understood them right, but then it also helps your brain like really focus on their face, like John, okay, yeah.
Or the good fallback is always bro and sir.
Yeah.
Because that happens to me. Like, it'll take me a little bit for some folks to remember their name, but like I said, I'll remember a face, and I'll remember that what you bought. But yeah, coming in here, it's like a Cheers type atmosphere. I definitely have some norms and some cliffs that walk in. If you're familiar with that TV show at all, you're probably too young, but and they just took it off of Netflix. I don't know why y'all did that. You're a bunch of terrorists. But having that comfortable atmosphere for folks to come in and ask questions and not be berated because they don't know something. So no one's ever born and comes out of the womb a Clint Smith from Thunder Ranch. Like, that does not happen. It's all based on experience, and no one's ever shows up to the game knowing everything. You have to start out as an idiot sometime, right? One of my customers out at the range for a training session came out, and for a first-time shooter, they had all this very quality gear. Like, they had done, somebody had either put them in the right direction or they had done their homework.
Like, it wasn't Condor?
No. But it was, there was an HK VP9 that my wife actually sold this lady, which is a great handgun. But it was just like the Eye Pro and the Ear Pro was very thought out. And the lady said, yeah, my husband said, for being a first-time shooter, it's okay, or you can't look like, it's okay to look like a novice, but not to look like an idiot. And I was like, well, I'm going to steal that. It's a great saying. It's a great one-liner. But yeah, coming in here and making it personable and not just a regular commercial transaction is a huge deal to folks because you want more responsible gun owners, right? You want return customers as well, but you want to give them a little bit of an education. There's been folks that just come in because they're getting their oil changed and they've got a 10-year-old kid with them, right? If there's nothing going on, man, hey kid, if it's okay with your dad, you want to learn how to unload this gun real quick? You want to know how? You want to know 4 safety rules? Why not, right? Because now you're doing your part to destigmatize this tool that the mass media seems to want to just berate every day, and that kid's going to remember that, right? And hopefully, in 11 years when he becomes age, he becomes a gun owner somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and that dad's going to appreciate that you're paying attention to his kid, too.
Right. And not in like a weird free candy way. You know what I mean? But that's it. With my knuckleheads, I got 4 of them. But since we took this place over, the weapons handling was a thing. Because, one, I'm a fan of child labor because I have to feed these kids, right? And I don't have to pay them. But they can put the guns in the safe for me while Melissa and I are tearing down the rest of this place to close up for the night. But weapons handling. If I have 60 handguns in here and I've shown them how to unload and handle those guns safely, if they're in here 3 times a week, it's Marine math, 180 opportunities of good weapons handling, right? And we're ingraining that slowly over and over again. But anyway, going off on a tangent about child labor laws.
Well, as we were talking about customer service, I actually thought about my worst customer experience that I've ever had. Well, customer service experience with a salesman in South Florida. This is right after I'd gotten back from Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. This is like 2 weeks after I got back from Afghanistan, and I had a lot of deployment money.
Yeah,
I was looking to buy an AR-15, and I was
smell bad decisions on you, bro.
And I walk into this place in South Florida. I can't even remember what it's called now, but I actually think I do remember what it's called now. I'm thinking about it, but I go in there and I'm, asking, can I look at this one? And I was looking at like the high dollar ones, BCM, Daniel Defense. I've got like 20 grand in deployment money.
Yeah,
I'm like
bro.
19 or 20, and I'm wanting to spend it. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at them and feeling, just feeling them out because I'd never owned my own personal one at that time. And this old dude, I don't know if he was a vet himself, and he was just like, he said if you want to learn something about rifles, you could go join the military and they teach you everything you need to know about it. And I was just like, oh, all right, well, here's your weapon back. I was like, I just got back from 9 months in Afghanistan, but
there you
I'm
go.
like going to take my money elsewhere. I think so.
How old was that guy, you think?
I would say like late 50s or 60s.
I find that generationally with gun stores, dudes that own stores like that are of that generation. I don't know if it's just the way they were brought up or what. But it always seems like it's guys that have no experience at all, like real life, but they've got that NRA instructor certification. And all of a sudden, they are ominous dominus. Let me tell you what you need, right? Don't worry about plastic guns. Don't worry about, you need a 1911 or a wheel gun or a Mini 14. And there's nothing wrong with those guns, right? I just want to put that. There's nothing wrong with them. But it's just that ego, man. I never went into a gun store and was like, let me tell you everything I know before this, that, and the other were closed, bro. But man, just you walk in and the dude behind the counter is just great. You're an NRA benefactor donator, like that's great. But
you get a coin every year.
Yeah, okay, congratulations. But that doesn't mean you know everything. Yeah, I see. Thank you. Sorry, I have children. Life interrupted. Get away from the camera. Anyway, if you have 3 or more children, then you understand what day drinking is and why you do it to cope. It is a coping mechanism.
Well, here, we'll backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you're going into the Marine Corps, what were you, so I'm a very introspective person, so I think about all this stuff. What were you hoping to get out of it? Like any life lessons specifically, or like a lot of it for me is hindsight, because I was looking at it and I was like, I really don't know what I'm going to do with my life, and my dad is telling me this would be a good stepping stone. If I want to go to college afterwards, I can for free, and I'll get to travel and do a lot of cool stuff nobody else my age will have done, or most people in the country have done. And now looking back, it was like it did a lot of things for me, but I don't necessarily think that I was going into it with any, searching for anything specific, I guess, for myself. And really, like, I never thought I was going to be in combat. I don't know why I signed up for the infantry, but I never really, it was like this fantasy, like, not real thing. I never thought I'd ever be in Afghanistan or really deploy or really go do anything. And then 6 months after I get to my unit, we're in Afghanistan. So,
right. Like you hit the skinny pedal on the right and you took off.
Yeah. And so I just didn't know if you had anything either going into it. Man, it shows how good his customer service is. All these people blowing up, guys coming up, trying to come in. If you were going into it looking for something like life experience, or especially now in hindsight, what did you gain from it? I mean, you've already kind of touched on that a lot.
Confidence, for sure. I mean, I was a dumb kid who hadn't really accomplished anything. I had just survived 18 years, basically, right? 20 years. I hadn't really learned much. Like, I was an okay high school student. I knew that I loved history a lot because basically it wasn't math and it wasn't English, and all I had to do was memorize things. But I knew that I needed something for myself to make me better, and it was I needed something constructive. I needed self-discipline, and I knew that the Marine Corps was, in my mind, the toughest branch, hands down.
You had those sweet uniforms to look at.
Oh yeah, bro, the dress blues.
Those Marine Corps dress blues seem to suck a lot of people in.
Oh, they do, man. And then you realize how uncomfortable they are. But that was definitely it. Like, I knew I needed to better myself for something because I was becoming something I didn't want to be. And I just put my name on the dotted line, and I got exactly what I asked for. And I got more confident in myself. I got rid of a lot of insecurities because for manhood nowadays, man, you just graduate high school and that automatically does. Folks, you're 18, you're an adult, you're a man now. Well, in our culture, that's what we have, but that's not true, man. Like, you just become an 18-year-old boy with facial hair, is what happens.
Hardly,
right?
I didn't have to shave but once a week when I went to basic training.
Right. So. But going through that, and I hesitate to use the term crucible because that's an actual thing that in the Marine Corps you do in boot camp. But it was a 13-week of Haze Fest, right? And aside from my dad, a handful of times, like, I went to boot camp, made a mistake, and a man put his hands on me and corrected me, right? Like, and you learn real quick, right? And when the Marine Corps, you can say what you want about, you need a little bit of violence in your life to get things right? It was a controlled violence. The guy was never out of hand, but when the Marine Corps took that out completely and the hazing, you need to be hazed, right? Because you're young and you're stupid. You're in the business of taking lives and saving them for the guys that are to the right and left of you, okay? So you need to know the purpose of your job. You need to know when and where to do, what not to do, because lives legit depend on you, and these drill instructors may have to work with you down the road. That's the other thing that you don't get. Like, those dudes are only like 4 years ahead of you as far as their contract goes. You could very well be working with that nerd later on in life.
I was once I was at my unit after I had deployed, my senior drill sergeant showed up to my unit and then joined my squad. We didn't have any open E6 slots for him, but because there are no E6 slots, he became a rifleman, just a basic private rifleman that just happened to have staff sergeant on his chest. And then we just got to bro down. But this guy had, like, destroyed my life.
Right, crushed
like
you.
a year ago.
Yeah.
And then now I'm getting to see this other side of him. But you really can really end up in a unit with these guys later on. Because once their drill billets up, they're going back to
They're going
the
right
fleet,
back to the job, bro.
And they don't want to end up with some idiot. And but you do need haze, just like
a healthy haze.
Yeah, because if you do something on a range or something, and then they give you a controlled dose of pain.
Oh yeah.
But then they're like, "Look, I'm giving you a controlled dose of pain right now, but you would be dead in actual combat." or 3 of your buddies would be dead. So I think this controlled amount of pain is okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Oh, for sure. And when you get there, like it's a whirlwind of everything, right? I had never been on a plane before. I had only left the state of Indiana like 3 or 4 times on vacation, okay, in my entire life. And now I'm flying from Indiana to California and completely alien. I remember on my flight, there were a bunch of preppy kids going to San Diego for spring break vacation, and they were my age. And I'm going to boot camp for the Marine Corps. And they're like half tanked, like, bro, thank you for your service, man. It's so cool what you're doing. And I was like, I haven't done anything. I'm just, I'm young, dumb. Like, thank you. And then you land, and bro, as soon as you got off the plane and you're walking down the exit ramp or whatever into the just saw this Marine in his Charlies. And he looks at me, and he looks right through your soul, and he snaps and he points at you, and he just starts screaming, and you're like, ah! And it's just nothing but high speed for 13 weeks, man. You have no time to feel sorry for yourself because you're super busy. You're always tired. You get desensitized real quick.
Yeah. This would be a cool thing to talk about, especially because you got 4 kids. And I think I've talked about this in like 1 or 2 of my other podcasts, but when I was 18, thinking about what I wanted to do, I was either going to go down one avenue of the military or the complete opposite avenue and go to a private art school.
Art school.
Yeah.
I listened to that, and I was like, for real?
Yeah. I was okay at drawing growing up, and I was really into drawing and really into video games, so I was like, maybe I'll go be a video game designer or something. And man, I'm glad I didn't do that. I would, the version that I am now would want to beat the shit out of the version that I would have turned out to be. But he said, from the time you're born to the time you turn 18, it's like that is your time as a father to develop you into the man that you're going to become. Once you're 17, 18, really like by the time you're 15 or 16, you're pretty much cemented. You're not wet clay anymore. You're drying and becoming the person that you're going to become, unless you have some outside entity dump water on you again and mold you into something different. And that's kind of what his point was. It's like, look, you're 18 now. There's nothing more I can do for you to develop you into a better man. You are who you're going to be, unless you go and basically sign up to have your life interrupted and change who you're going to be. He's like, the military is that perfect thing that not college, not anything else can give you that same result in developing you more. He's like, you're maxed out on life development. Unless you go to the military, they will develop you more into a more honorable and hardworking and confident man.
Oh, for sure.
And so, what do you think about that kind of idea?
Well,
would you? A lot of guys went to the military, but then wouldn't actually like to see their kids go to the military. So this might be like too personal or something. But
no, it's not personal at all. It's always a topic in our house, military, right? I ask the boys, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's it's either I want to buy the gun store from you, or I want to join the army, or I want military, or something. Those answers change quite a bit, but it's not a new topic, right? One day that they'll want to be some computer guy or whatever, but it's not a new topic. But I've got a limited time. So my oldest boy, I've only got 8 more years with this kid before he's out in the real world. So what I want him to know, one, is that he's made in God's image. Like, that's the thing, right? Keep your eye on that, because that will help you out in your toughest times. And then learning from your mistakes, because there'll be some times where you'll have to look back on somebody else, especially me within some schools, because I felt like I was on such a compressed timeline sometimes. I didn't feel like I had enough time to be I needed to be good right now. I didn't have time to learn. I didn't have time to make the mistake to learn from it, so I needed to look to someone else to say, be smart enough to be like, I see what you did there. I see what you're explaining to me. I don't want to do that. I want them to be able to see my life and say, Dad made these mistakes. I saw how he recovered, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe he bobbled it. Maybe he fumbled completely. But if he can learn from that and save him some headache down the road, then that'd be great. But yeah, the military is, again, it's that one of the few things in our culture where you can take a young man, dump him because he's a wet puppy, and then he comes out the other side of that furnace, and he's just a little bit harder, a little bit smarter. Well, I don't know. When you get out of boot camp, you're still pretty dumb. But it's one of those things where you get thrown into the fire. It's sink or swim, right? I was 20 years old. I worked corrections in the Marine Corps. Had never been in charge of a thing in my life, bro. And I get dumped in a squad bay full of criminals. Dudes that had been in the Marine Corps 15, 18 years. Guys that used to be gunnies and warrant officers, or was a captain, or was a sergeant. I was a PFC, bro, in charge of 18 men. What other leadership experience, not even in the Marine Corps, where a PFC is in charge of 18 people? You make a ton of mistakes, but you figure out. Yeah, you
charge that many people.
No, dude. And it's like at first it's terrifying, right? Because you don't know what you figure out what they're in there for, but you're in charge of 18 dudes. You've never been in charge of anything in your life. You learn real quick what works and doesn't work, right? And you also learn about manipulation, not only to get people to do things that you want them to do, but on the counter, because criminals are really good at manipulating folks. So it's a huge experience. But if you take that 20 years old, right, in charge of 18 people, and you're trying to keep, security of the brig and everything else, if you take that experience and then you parallel it to a 20-year-old art student or at some university, dude, the amount of life experience is vastly different. You know what I mean?
I would end up being some like hipster.
Oh yeah,
kid,
right?
Yeah,
it would have been all downhill, right?
Yeah.
You'd have been wearing your sister's jeans and wearing a beanie when it's outside and it's 90 degrees. And that, a great example of that is you take a look at the BLM protesters and all the pasty white kids that are college students that are out there with their, their white guilt or whatever it is that they're slinging around and their privilege. And then you see what happened with Chaz. And I wonder how close those kids at Chaz were to Green Eyes and Black Rifles showing up in the middle of the night to take that place back. Maybe it was close, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but I know for a fact that if men showed up to challenge those boys, it would have been gone a lot quicker, because none of those kids that were walking around with their airsoft gear and their AR-15s with their boundary at Chaz had ever been confronted by an actual man before. You know what I mean? And that would have totally changed the circumstances. Probably wouldn't have worked out as, who knows how it would have worked out. But
I was thinking like you could send like an ODA down there and they'd have it back in 30 minutes.
Easily. I mean, it took an hour for the police department to do it.
Yeah.
But folks are so weak to make a decision. And earlier we had talked about learning more from bad leadership than good leadership, or than good leaders, as far as leadership was concerned. And analysis, or paralysis through analysis, folks staring at a problem for so long that they never make a decision. What I've learned is that when you make a decision, as long as it's a good one, it's fine, right? It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to have enough information to make the perfect decision, but you have to make a decision. And you can't stand there and do nothing, but you're going to have to do something.
Yeah. Especially like the life-altering, potentially life-altering and like combat application of that idea of like a bad decision now is better than a perfect decision too late.
Oh, 100%.
It applies there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they just let them hang out there for like 2 weeks or something.
Mm-hmm.
Growing their own plants and potatoes and stuff, like they're going to feed like 1,000 people.
But it's just, and boys have such a hard time anyway, with public schools and everything. Like, they're designed for girls. My daughter excels. She got straight A's all year, straight A's. My boys got great grades as well, but they need to go outside. They need to go out and get bruises and scrapes and scratches and climb a tree, right? Or throw them a stick so they can chew on it. Those kids need to get outside. When you take a boy for 8 hours and you tell him that he has to sit down and he gets 25 minutes for the whole day for recess. Like, that doesn't work out, bro. So it's the boys are behind the power curve anyway, and culture wants to tell you about toxic masculinity and this, that, and the other, and being a man is offensive and the patriarchy and everything else, whatever. Because when push comes to shove, you're going to need men, right? Bill Burr has a great thing when he talks about if you don't think that masculinity is not a thing, like when you're talking about the Titanic and it's sinking, and I'm paraphrasing, but who were the first people to get off? Women and children, right? And the dudes stayed behind because that's what we do, right? And you can try to rephrase it and make a different argument all you want, but at the end of the day, it's going to be that way, man.
Well, have you ever read the book Tribe?
Yeah, I know, Jordan Peterson, right?
Or Sebastian Younger.
Oh, Sebastian Younger. I knew it was one of those dudes.
Yeah, the guy that made the Restrepo documentary.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't read that book, I just finished it just like 2 weeks ago, but they talk about the culture and of being in like a small community and like shared suffering, how that gives like, it's almost like an evolutionary kind of, we have this desire in us that the luxuries of modern day society have kind of taken away. You know, there is no, you don't have to go struggle anymore, but that struggle provides a sense of fulfillment, especially when you're struggling with a small community of people to try and overcome hardships. And that's why, like, guys at the end of the Restrepo documentary were saying, like, they'd just spent an hour talking about all their PTSD and how awful this experience was, and then at the very end they're like, would you go back to combat? And they're like, if there was a plane outside this door right now to go back with those same guys, I would get on it right now. I don't need to tell my family. I would get on that plane right now. It's like there's something, and like how people who go to combat or are in the military, because it kind of provides you that lifestyle anyways, when they get out, there's just like this void. And I know I've felt it, but I think there's a lot to, and I was thinking there's a lot to that whole Chaz thing, because these are a lot of people that are, when I look at them, I think these are probably like kind of social outcasts.
Yes, 100%.
Looking for community.
They've latched onto something.
And they've never had to struggle.
No, they've never had a struggle. They've never been a part of something. And then here comes along this group that's inclusive, right? And they latch onto it, and now they're a part of something. They're a part
with a purpose,
right? With a purpose. Now they have a purpose. They're a part of a group of people, but they've got this thing they've craved and wanted for 18, 20 years, right? Finally have it. But you know, on the inside, they know that it's not a legit message. But they can't let go of something that they've strived for or wanted their whole life.
I think it's like something they never knew they wanted until they had
it. And then because it has these views are askew from what America's based on, they want to. I guarantee that they're pushing those down. They're pushing that down because they want to be a part of a group. But when you're talking about those dudes from Restrepo, when they said, "Yeah, I'd go back in a heartbeat," that's that adventure. That's that desire for adventure. That's the desire to be get that camaraderie. And you know that ever since you're a kid, like you want to be the hero, man. You want to be the guy that rescues the girl, right? You want to be the guy that helps out. You want to be there with your brothers. You want to do something dangerous, right? Like that little knucklehead that keeps putting his finger in front of the camera. That kid wants to be dangerous. He's been like that his entire life. He wants to jump off things. He wants to everything's a gun to him, right? He's always killing bad guys. He's always showing off sweet ninja moves. And embrace that, man. And my wife is great at that with the boys. She is great at letting them be boys and not coddling them. She's great at watching them get hurt, swallowing those emotions that she just watched her baby get hurt, but then telling them it's okay. It's a scratch. Yeah, you're bleeding, but it's a long way from your heart, right? But men have that innately. Like they want that adventure. They want to seek it, even as sometimes their own detriment, right? Those Restrepo dudes had been through a lot. And then at the end of the day, they would still go back with those guys. If I did not have a family, I would still be doing contract work with those guys. I don't know that I'd still be in the Marine Corps because I was kind of tired of that. But even on the SWAT team, if that job had paid more, I'd still be there. That was one of the best jobs I'd ever had. I shot all the time. We did great things together. We had great little mission sets. But being with the dudes, right? The downtime, 90% of it is downtime, where it's nothing but dick and fart jokes, right? And it's monsters, and it's tobacco, and you're just chilling. And then you also get to know pretty intimate things about guys, right? Because there's nothing 90%. To do but talk. And that's part of the reason why our humor is so dark and so crude, right? And then it's also a way to cope with things.
Yeah. Compartmentalize the
for sure
dark stuff that you.
But when I moved from Virginia to here, all my Marine Corps buddies, all my cop buddies were in Virginia, and I got here, I didn't have anybody, right? My best friend here was my wife's dad, and not a vet, but he's a great dude. But there are things that I can't talk with him about because it's just a different experience, right? And but when I got this place and we started rolling and more vets came in, like, you just say something and it just catches a guy just right, and you guys we instantly connect, right? Because it comes from the same background, and I don't know how to explain it other than you just know. I don't know if you've ever had that happen before, but what this podcast does is what happens here on the daily. It connects vets. Like, you just similar experiences, and it immediately aligns, and there's a baseline that everybody's familiar with, right? And whether it's humor or whether it's dealing with losing somebody, but there's that baseline. And I don't know, but it just speaks to what guys want to be ever since they're a kid. I mean, nobody wants to grow up to be a CPA. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and I love people that keep me out of tax prison. But, it's always a firefighter, cop, soldier, whatever, right? It's something dangerous. They want to do something dangerous.
Well, we went off on a pretty deep tangent there, but we'll try and steer back around here to focus back on you. And since you're kind of a veteran of several different services, over all of your time in all of those different fields, what would you say your best experience was, and what would you say your worst experience was? Maybe I could have fed you this before so you could ponder.
Yeah, so I could ponder that one, right? My best experience would have to have been, oh man, that's tough, dude. So I had great times as a cop and contract work, and there wasn't any one specific thing, but it was the guys that I worked with that was a great time as far as occupation went. Worst, I don't know that I ever had one point in my life where I was the worst. I had tons of people I worked for that sucked at life. I had that. I mean, if you had to point at any one thing, that would probably be this working for awful leadership. Folks that cared more about themselves or being a career yes man than it was either mission accomplishment or morale. I mean, that's super frustrating, especially, getting ready to go into an op, and then all of a sudden your lineup changes, right? So your commander leaves for whatever reason. They pull him and say, you got to go with X amount of folks. You're like, we've been planning this with X amount of dudes. We've got all these contingencies in place. Now you're changing our leadership and you're shortening it down to 4 dudes. Why? Because you've got an ego thing you want to figure out? I mean, that's an actual story that happened, and it's like, I don't know, bad leadership would definitely have to be the one thing. I don't know if there's any one specific person. I gave that as an example, but I guess that goes with anything. But I hope that rambling answered that question. Did I miss it?
No, I think you did.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be one specific thing, but one, just even if it's kind of like an abstract concept, like something like bad leadership. I think everybody that goes in the military is...
you're going to get it. It is what it is, man.
You just try to learn as much as possible from them, even if they piss you off. And
oh yeah, that's why you think there's so many smoke pits in the military. It's because you can go out there, break away from the flagpole for a little bit, shove a cigarette or a dip in your face, and you guys just bitch and complain to each other for a little bit, and then you go right back in, right? But it all comes. You miss the clowns, but not the circus. How's that? Like the circus, I'm glad I left it. I'm glad I left the yes men who were chained to their desk all the time. But I miss the dudes, man. Yeah. I miss the dudes a lot.
I've never heard it put that way, but I like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think I might have to steal that.
I'm trying to remember where I heard that from. I did not come up with that. The other thing is when I become more appreciative of my past as the older I get. Because when I was in the Marine Corps, right when I got out, I was surrounded by a bunch of jars to begin with. So it was like I got out, but I didn't really get out. And I was like, yeah, it was great. I was in the Marine Corps, outstanding. But the farther I get away from it, it's like, I'm glad I did that, right? It becomes a little bit more special. But it's also, keep in perspective, it's like when you break up with a girlfriend, like the further down the road you get, you kind of look back and you're like, oh, I guess those were good times. And then you're like, think about it a little bit more. You're like, no, I remember why I left that crazy. I remember why, because she sucked. And, but I did enjoy I did, by and large, definitely enjoyed the military service, joining the Marine Corps. I definitely selected the right branch of service for me, because I think if I did anything less than that I wouldn't have the same effect on me. And those handful of leaders that I worked with, had a significant impact on me, more so than the bad leaders, for sure. So I don't want to for all those kids that are on the fence about joining the military, don't let bad leadership scare you off. Because for every bad leader that I had a great dude that I worked with, right? It may have been just another E3, or it may have been, a young NCO, but there were always those dudes. And especially on the team, on our SWAT team, we had great dudes that I worked with, man. Like, everybody was really good. And that was the other thing, is that when you're surrounded by a bunch of guys who are good at what they do, it makes you want to be good at what you do, bro. Like, you want to be the best. And everybody that we had on our team was a phenomenal shooter. And we had a handful of guys that were really great instructors, and I had an amazing boss who could both speak admin, operate, and then make connections for better training for us. And that dude, hands down, is one of the best guys I've ever worked with. That's the guy that's coming up to do those courses. But, and having that experience with him, and him opening up those doors, propelled me to be on a contract I really had no business being on. You know what I mean? But he got me through these doors to talk with people, to get courses, to get cert, to get experience. And for a long time, not deploying as a Marine weighed on me a lot, because it was like I was the only sergeant in the Marine Corps that didn't deploy during how long we're still in Afghanistan, right? And I didn't deploy once as a Marine. I was like, man, I feel like I really missed out. But then as I got experience and started going to these schools, if you're good at what you do, you're good at what you do, right? There's been plenty of folks that I've met that deployed that didn't do anything. You know what I mean? But you went outside the wire. You did some kind of convoy. You could have been a dude that was stuck on a fob doing garrison MP work, pulling people over for traffic tickets in a war zone, which seems like the most ridiculous thing ever. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I'm sure it is.
It is.
Because it's a military, right? Wear your glow strap 24/7, and don't run with earbuds in. And then you drive around on base, and what do you see? People wearing their...
It doesn't have to make sense.
No, it doesn't have to make sense. And no one outranks safety.
If you're joining the military, to have a lot of stuff make sense.
It's so dumb. So you'll go to a class in the military called tobacco cessation, right? You'll get 50 minutes of instruction, then you'll get a 10-minute smoke break. That's the world that we live in, okay? Oh, my goodness.
Or some of the sharp briefings that you've been in.
Oh, my gosh. Like the most ridiculous.
You'd hear the most inappropriate things said during your sexual harassment briefings.
Oh, yeah. The safety briefs are the best, right? Don't add or subtract to the population, right? Don't come back with a dead girl or live boy.
It was just like, don't kill your wives. Don't beat your kids. Don't beat your wife. Don't beat your neighbor. Don't beat your neighbor's wife. Don't beat your neighbor's kids. Don't kill anybody. Like, don't rape anybody. Like, you have to tell dudes that.
Yeah, you have to do everything. You have to cover it because it's already been done. Yeah. So I had a sergeant major tell me one time, and he's like, listen, when it comes to Lance Corporals, and Lance Corporals in E3 in the Marine Corps, when it comes to Lance Corporals, they're either going to lose it, hurt themselves, or break it. And that's 100% true, man. Because Lance Corporals, Lance Criminals are the dumbest people on earth, man. We're so stupid that at that age. It doesn't matter if you're a 32-year-old Lance Corporal or if you're an 18-year-old Lance Corporal. Like, you're just stupid, man. It is what it is.
So you got out of the Marine Corps as a sergeant?
Yeah, I guess E5. Yeah.
So we haven't talked much about your guard experience, but you're in the guard now.
Yeah, I always do that, man. It's almost like an afterthought. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but when I joined the guard 2 years ago, I was doing it when I was doing contract work, and I really needed the insurance because I got 4 kids, and that's why I threw my hat back into the ring on that. But the command that I've worked for has been pretty good because being a small business owner is super taxing on your time. And it always seems like drill always pops up at the worst time, always, whenever you're a small business owner. And the challenge is here with me is that if this doesn't succeed, there's no plan B for me, bro. Like if Title 10 orders, that's what federal orders, right? Yeah. If those come down the pipe, there's nobody that's legally bound to hold my job for me. It's me, bro.
Yeah,
like I don't work for anyone else that's legally supposed to hold that paycheck for me when I get back. So if something happens and I gotta leave this, like if we remember when the whole Iran thing was going on, missiles and all that, this, the other, and everybody in my unit started texting like, "Oh, we're gonna go to war," and I was like, "Well, no, I don't think we are." It's a little ways off from that, but the wheels started turning in my mind like, crap. Like if I leave, there's no plan for this place. So it's kind of nerve-wracking. But the unit that I'm with has been really good with split trains and working with me on this. And I just got lucky, man. I ended up at two different units, and both units I had good people that helped me out, man. And it just seems to be I've been lucky and blessed in my life that that's happened to me. But yeah, the guard, bro. It's cheap insurance.
So you're in the guard now. So I guess now we'll just talk about what you have going on and what's the story with Bear Arms.
This place has grown so much, and we've owned it since November of 2018, so we're approaching 2 years coming up. It is a family feel with a commercial presentation. When I bought this place, it looked like a crappy flea market, and that was one of the first things I wanted to fix. I wanted to look good. I wanted to look bright. I wanted to look clean. I wanted people to be able to be as close to the guns as they could possibly get, because I didn't like trying to purchase as a customer. I didn't like trying to purchase a gun when it was 15 feet away from me and I couldn't really see it. And I mean, if you're going to grab the gun and run out of here, first of all, you're going to get caught anyway, right? But that never happens. That's not going to sound like I say that never happens because gun stores try to get robbed, which seems the most ridiculous thing ever. But I wanted people to be able to pick up a rifle, take a look at it, and then put it back. If they, you know what I mean? I just wanted it was like test driving a car. You don't buy a car from standing 15 feet away. Like you want to get inside it, you want to feel it, you want to smell it, you want to hold it. And I wanted people to have that kind of an intimate transaction with the gun. Handguns are a little different. I got to keep those in the cabinet, but you ask, I'll hand them to you. But I wanted a clean space for folks to walk into. I wanted a comfortable space for folks to walk into. We acquired a training venue, so we've got a 100-yard outdoor range that's like 7 minutes from here. It's the only one in Hamilton County that I'm aware of. It's 100-yard outdoors. You can rent that time. It's pretty inexpensive. You can find that on our website, beararmsllc.net. beararmsllc.net. Oh, sure. But and the other thing is with the vet community is we like helping each other out. And for the most part, all but one person are all vets. Pretty much everybody. And there's just one guy, but that dude's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to guns anyway. And and I've been blessed for folks to walk through the door and say, "Hey, man, I've got a little bit of experience. I'd like to help out." Enter Cole, right? And then, but it's a great place to come and hang out. There's no judging here.
Yeah, I've been hanging out here for like a year before
Yeah.
you ever
Yeah, man.
let me help out.
And
with
then
anything.
dude, happy to have you because you're a huge help. You really are.
I don't feel like I help out that much.
Oh yeah, man. Babysitting the range and then pewing yourself.
Yeah. I feel like you're the one that's getting the short end of the stick. I just go
man.
babysit some people out there, make sure they're not going to shoot themselves in
Right.
the face, and then I just get to shoot for free. Like,
Yeah, it's been a huge help, and the guys that work here have been a huge help as well. I don't know that I'm working any less now that we've hired a couple of dudes. It seems like I'm working more, but that's just being a small business owner, man. And man, let me tell you a little story about taxes. After working for the federal government, like the only thing that they're really good at is spending your money. And now that I own my own small business and I see how much I pay, I just want to push the brakes on all that and slap all the politicians in the face. But it's without a doubt, it's the most challenging and the most rewarding thing I've ever done is being a small business owner, hands down. I mean, I'll come in and there'll be just be one day of great, awesome. You're hitting all these goals and making all these objectives, and then the next day you'll come in and have to put out 15 fires, right? And you don't feel like you get anything done. And then on top of that, you got to keep putting on this great face, and you got to give people customer service because that's what they expect, right? They expect to be treated nice, they expect to get good information, and that's what you want to do. And it's different every day, bro. It's different every day, and we do our best to misspell myths that people see in movies. Like I've had people come in and like, is that a silencer? Is that legal? Can you have that? Like, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
it's actually not as quiet as you probably think.
No, it actually. Hold on, bub.
What would you say your funniest or craziest story is since business related?
In here?
Yeah. I'm sure you've had a few.
Funny stories, not funny. I'll tell you the most aggravating thing is guys that'll come in that are, and it's not everybody, they're just a handful. It'll be the older guys that'll come in and tell you that, 45 will hit you and flip you backwards and this, that, and the other, and like, you try to circumvent that without saying, actually, no, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because what you want to. You just hear things like that. It's like FUD lore, if you're familiar with that term or not.
Yeah.
All the FUDology out there, and it's like, nah, that's not really it. So you just try to do your best to wiggle around that. But you hear those stories so often from folks.
You should develop tact.
Yes, so you quickly figure out how to inform someone without insulting them. But it's a barbershop, dude. You'll hear some crazy stories, man. Folks come in, but you put on the best face, and you may hear the same thing 40 times a day, but there's a real genuine effort to make it feel like that's the first time you've heard it, and you want to make that person feel like that you're totally invested, and you are to a certain point. I mean, we're human like everybody else, but you want to make that as personable of a transaction as possible and actually give somebody a little bit of an audience and let them talk it.
Well, you don't seem like you're just trying to make a buck either. Like if somebody's interested in something for the wrong reasons, or they're looking at something that's not as high quality, I feel like I've been in here a few times where you've tried to steer them in a different direction. Just even if it means that you're missing out on a sale, you'd rather give them a quality product that maybe you don't make as much money on than give them something out of your store that would benefit you but not benefit them as much.
For sure, and that goes back to
But I think people can tell that, though.
Yeah, and I think they can too, but that goes back to my military time and being a young cop too, is having dudes that knew what they were talking about getting in front of me and saying, this is what you want. These are the reasons why. Go out and experience yourself, but I guarantee you when you come back, you'll see what I'm talking about. And maybe that's not the best business model, but there's a huge difference between some of these lower end guns and this one that costs $500, $600, $700, $800. It's all shooter preference. I'll sell you anything you want. You walk in here and you want a slingshot, I'll sell you a slingshot, right? But I think it's more beneficial to have a responsible gun owner with a good piece of gear than it is just to make a sale, right?
Well, I think that's maybe not immediately investing in your business, but long term, it's probably a bigger investment.
That'll bring folks back because eventually they'll figure it out on their own, and then they'll realize, well, that dude at Bear Arms was actually kind of genuine about it, and he kind of maybe knew what he was talking about on this particular subject. Now, I don't always hit it out of the park, right? I guarantee I've messed up on something. And I know when I first took over this place, there were some gun laws. It was like, you can't put a vertical grip on an AR pistol. That doesn't make any sense. It's an accessory. Lo and behold, the most ridiculous laws are actually sometimes laws.
Unless the pistol has an overall length 26 inches.
Yeah.
And,
Anyway, I prefer angle grips anyway, but anyway, you live and learn for sure. But yeah, you just being genuine with folks, man. And just because I think I prefer one piece of gear over another doesn't make it wrong. It's just just my preference. But with everything that I put in here, there's certain things I don't carry, right? I don't carry. I'm not going to say the brand, but there's certain holsters that are lower end I just don't carry because they're garbage. If you're going to come in here and you're going to throw down your hard-earned money and you're going to buy a piece of gear, it's going to be solid, right? If you come to my store, it's going to be a good piece of gear. It may not be super expensive, but it's something that I've either used or know someone that has used, and it's going to work. And that's what I try to set people up. I mean, if you just take a kind of a little bit of a look around in here, that's good quality stuff, right? It's not just, I bought this for $5 and I can flip it for another 15. You know what I mean? That's not what we do, and that's not what I want to do. I'm not going to set people up for failure to go out and drop $20 on a holster because it was only $20, but it's only good for 3 weeks because it starts falling apart. That's dumb. I tell folks a lot, buy once, cry once. And a good buddy of mine on my team used to say that all the time because I was kind of a cheapskate. And he would say, listen, man, buy once, cry once. You buy something, close your eyes when you pay for it. It's a good piece of gear to last you. And it speaks to a lot of the stuff we have. Now
they have altered that saying, and they add an E onto the end of that cry. Yeah, cry precision. Buy one.
Somebody's a fanboy. Somebody's a fanboy.
But it's true though.
Yeah.
Buy cry precision. You're not
for sure, man.
That's just one example of a high-end brand. But
I don't roll in that sweet cheddar that the owner of the guy that does Veterans of Veterans podcast has. But
yeah, I got sweet clothes, but you got suppressors and nicer guns. But hey, man, rule number 1 is look cool.
Yeah, it's the 90% of the reason why we do something. If you don't look cool, it's not worth doing. You always have sunglasses because the sun never sets on the cool, bro. Okay? You always wear those.
And just like my first team leader when I showed up to my National Guardian, it said, like, looking cool is 99% of what we do here. You will have Ray-Bans as PPE in the field.
Yes,
and you will have a hard part in your hair. You will have good hair.
Hard part in our hair. I love it, dude. There was a dude that came that did some split time with us. He was a reservist, but he was in recon, and he had the hardest part. The hardest part in his hair, bro. And he was pomaded out, bro. Super slick.
Daddy, can we put on back to Nintendo?
Yeah, in just a minute. Okay, thank you. That, just in case you didn't see that was a Nintendo 64 cartridge for Donkey Kong. Okay? That's how we roll around here, bro. Okay, yep, GoldenEye 007.
That'll probably bring in more fans.
I know. Actually, dude, we used to have it hooked up, bro. And there would be guys that would be waiting on their paperwork and stuff, and dudes would sit in, throw on some Nintendo 64, and relive the sweet 90s.
Well,
yeah, bro.
We'll start wrapping up a little bit here. What are your plans for Bear Arms? I mean, now you got the store, you got the range, but plans for expansion?
Oh yeah,
or-
all the time, man. So our 5-year goal was to eventually have our own range, and we made that in right around a year and a half. I don't know if it was something we were doing or it just hard work met opportunity or what it was, but it just kind of landed in our lap and we jumped at it.
Well, you got a good opportunity for expansion now too, because what is it, 8.3 million guns sold in the
Oh
just in
yeah,
this year,
bro, just
on
been
track to be
insane.
the highest selling gun sales
year.
year in U.S. history.
Yep,
So,
for sure. And
good time to get into the gun selling
yeah,
business.
I hope it stays that way. I don't know that it will because the market always ebbs and flows. But the amount of new gun ownership and the amount of folks that realize how important the Second Amendment actually is, and that it's not just a political talking point, but that the founders put that there for a reason. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your safety, nobody else, right? As a cop, you would call me, you would call 911, it would get to dispatch. By the time it got to me in my patrol car and I'm wiping mustard off my patrol uniform, by the time I get there, the event's either it's already going or it's already over, and I'm just there to respond on the back end.
Law enforcement is not a proactive
No,
organization.
bro. It's 100% reactive.
100%.
100%.
Just the same with first responders and
yeah.
EMS and stuff. If we could prevent the accident from happening, we would, but
Yep.
you're only getting called when something has already happened. So
yeah, expansion.
and then defund the police. Yeah, let's get rid of
Oh
the Second
my
Amendment
gosh,
and
bro.
defund the
So
police.
check this out, okay? Here we go on tangent again. They don't even make sense, the liberals. So like, defund the police, right? Let's get rid of it, and then all of a sudden the vandals will trash their house, right? And then who do they call? The cops. It doesn't work that way, homie. And then like the other thing is that these BLM defund the cops protesters will have a protest and they'll want to walk, and then what do they request? A law enforcement presence,
Yeah.
so that they can have their protest. Bro, it's so
Just
ridiculous.
like in the Chaz when they were
My gosh.
getting shot and then not letting people in. It's
Oh
like,
yeah,
okay, well, that guy's
what they
gonna
do?
die.
They made a wall and they started carrying guns, right? And then
Yeah,
they
the very
started
first
they
thing.
started interviewing folks that were coming in to their whatever it
vet them
was. Oh my
and
gosh.
then they're protesting police brutality, and then they're way more brutal.
Just smoke checking fools, like beating them down, bro. And
whole thing was hilarious.
kind of you kind of got a solid taste of what they wanted and how long that would last.
Yeah.
But as far as this place to continue to grow, and it's we've been so blessed in the last year and a half of how well things have gone, whether it's probably a combination of great customer service and then also the political environment. And one thing, the cool thing about owning this place is I'm a politically volatile space. So when somebody walks into my store, I own a gun store. There's automatically a latitude where I get to say what I want, right? It's kind of like when you get Duck Dynasty, folks, you get Duck Dynasty flavor, right? When you come into Bear Arms, it's veteran owned. I own a gun store. You don't have to take a wild guess where my political stance is, right? You know what I mean? And some folks, they just want. There's been a handful of times where some folks are like, I'm not into that. I just want to buy a gun, and I totally get that and respect that. But at the same time, like, I'm a gun store. Like you kind
You're a
of
target of a lot of politicians.
Oh yeah, bro. Even those with the R next to their name.
Yeah.
100%. And it's just because they're weak individuals. They'll kowtow to the masses, or at least kowtow to whoever's the loudest. But that just, you got to raise your kid right. But all your kids, especially your boys, you got to raise them to be good men and to be independent, ask questions, and find out answers on their own. But for this place here, I would love for it to continue to grow. Multiple retail locations, improve on the range, maybe another one. That'd be fantastic. And hopefully hire somebody named Cole to run the show so I can sit down on my front porch and drink beers at 9:30 in the morning and not have to show up to work.
You already know I've been pestering you about other stuff, too. But so, let's see. I can put like a jump cut in this or something. Oh, well.
Hey,
So let's.
Good Bear, maybe not do all the pinging over there with the stuff. Oh, man. Trying to think of what else. Hopefully we covered.
So a big motivation for me in doing this podcast is assuming that your kids or their kids could one day watch this and get an idea of who you are. So what would you say, like I'm a very family-oriented kind of person, and legacy and stuff like that. So what would you say, maybe you can tie your military service or other services into it, what would you say to potentially your grandkids? What does it mean to you as, Grandpa Derrick? What does it mean to be a Turner? What does it mean to be a good person, a good American, all that stuff? If you could leave like a little impact, if they're curious to hear what your idea of being a good person, hearing it straight from the source, what would you have to say to your grandkids potentially one day?
Yeah, well, that's kind of easy. So, one is that you're made in the image of God, right? Dad is boss, Christ is king. You need to be genuine, and you need to be humble. But you also need to be able to you need to be a little dangerous. You need to be able to do violence to protect other folks. Doesn't mean that you just walk around and you bully everybody, but you need to be able to stand up for something and fight for those that you love. That's what you need. But if you do all that, if you're well-rounded, just because you got to have good experience too. Make it good experience. Just because you have experience doesn't make it good. And then seek out information. Seek it out. Never stop learning. You won't always know everything. But don't stop training. Don't stop training.
It seems like the more I've hung out with you, the more I've gotten like this. Obviously you have like a very tight-knit family unit, as your wife helps support the business and stuff. But I think this could be good for like people to get a better understanding of who the owner of Bear Arms is, and obviously being a red-blooded American patriot that loves guns, but
and bacon.
It seems like the church has a pretty prevalent place in.
For sure, man.
And I know for me personally, like I've gone through my ebbs and flows of how committed I am, I guess at times. I was raised Protestant and stuff, but it was really like when I went to Afghanistan and I saw like how strongly these people believe in their faith. We never had anything crazy happen, but we had people trying to, they did successfully steal like batteries and wires off of our base. They got caught before they got out of the final gate, but they only have one use of that kind of stuff. So me kind of being like, man, I don't, these people believe so strong that they would like kill themselves and their kids for their faith, and I don't believe that strongly in mine. So then it started like doubt in myself, not doubt in my belief that there is a higher power and stuff, but really belief in, or doubt in myself and my own strength in my faith and stuff. Maybe talk about like that. What does faith mean to you, and how you are raising your kids? And
the foundation, the cornerstone, without a doubt. Because one thing that you become is, for me, obviously, I'm a Christian, right? So that means I've accepted Jesus, my Lord and Savior, and I know that I'm not perfect, right? I make mistakes all the time, and I know that when you get to that point, you get humbled real quick because you've made mistakes. But when you go through that and someone shows you forgiveness because you've been a nerd to them and you've hurt them somehow or whatever, and they show you grace and forgiveness, that's impactful, hugely. And you get to pass that along, and that impacts other people. But then that feeds into that whole being humble and being genuine, right? Doesn't mean that you go through life without consequence. That's not what that means at all. But you show folks grace. It's easier to talk to people about it too. When you come in here, I'm not standing here behind the counter that says, like, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell, right? I don't have rattlesnakes behind my countertop, you're shaking them around. That's not what but it's pretty evident. I got a Bible sitting right here, and I don't shove it in your face, but if somebody asks, it's here, and then you can kind of get subtle undertones in here as well. That we are pretty faith-based, but showing folks grace and being humble. And but there's also nothing wrong with sticking up for yourself. I'm reading in the book of Judges right now, and you want to talk about some dudes who are not perfect. You're talking about a nation who's not perfect, but guys that were legit. God gave them, they weren't necessarily the bravest or whatever. They weren't necessarily equipped, but he called them and he equipped them. And those dudes did some work, right? They messed some people up. I mean, Samson slayed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey, bro. That's bad. That's as BA as you can get, dude, right? He kills a lion, right? Kills a lion and comes back later, and in the carcass of the lion there's honeybees, right? And then he takes some of that honeycomb and eats the honey from a lion that he's killed. Like that's pretty solid, bro, right? But there's also great life lessons in there too, because you also see how everybody's human. The only one that in that whole this whole book here that's perfect is Christ. But you see that, you know, Samson and Gideon, who this knucklehead's named after, you see how they did great things, then they kind of lost their way, and then they got corrected, and then they, you know, it just shows you that struggle that everybody goes through. You get great, you know, you're doing great things, you're doing the right thing, and all of a sudden you just fall into this dumb cycle where you're being an idiot again. Then you find yourself a little bit of grace, and you're doing great things again. It's just a cycle. But that's the whole reason why Christ comes along in the New Testament, is to take that death sentence off of you and say, listen, bro, I got you. Come back to me. I'll help you out. And he's always there. But for these guys and for our family, that's the foundation. That's the base. It's grace. It's forgiveness. Not without consequence. But I think folks would be a lot better off if they got a little bit into the Word too. But you'll definitely get battled. It doesn't fix all your problems, bro. I am the antithesis of what the left wants you to be, right? So I'm a white dude who's Christian, who owns a gun store, who is in the military. Like, you can't get more, like, opposite than what the narrative wants you to be. Like, I don't feel any guilt because I'm white. I certainly don't have any privilege. Everything in here has been hard work, 80 hours, sacrificing time with those kids, sacrificing time with my wife, to be here to make this place work. I wasn't handed anything, right? I did 6 years in the Marine Corps. I used my GI Bill to get my bachelor's degree and then get a master's degree. Then I became a cop. I put handcuffs on people. I did the SWAT thing for a while. I went overseas and worked with folks. I came here, knew nothing about business, but I knew that I liked guns. I knew that I was a decent person and I could talk to folks. And now we're growing this business. I haven't been handed anything. But my faith, without a doubt, has helped me throughout all of it. I haven't always been great at everything. There's been a couple of times where dude, I've been a train wreck, right? But faith keeps you grounded. And it also gives you a place when you're at your lowest and there's nowhere else to look up. It helps you get back up off your feet. And America loves a redemption story. America is a great forgiving place. But when folks make a mistake and folks own up to it and they apologize and they're genuine about it, the grace is given, man. It's out there. But some folks just can't seem to get that. But it won't make your life any easier, but it certainly helps.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably a reason you guys have been blessed with a growing company. And I mean, just like, again, Joe and I talked about you guys the other day, that like I feel like maybe this is incorrect, but I like really feel like with you and Melissa, because like there's been times where like you weren't in here, but I bought 2 shirts, and then she was like, don't you want to buy this one? What do you think about this color? I was just like, I don't know. I'll probably collect it one day, but I don't want to like pay for it. And then she just like gave it to me, and like just those little things. And like I think you might have hooked me up with a hat too. I can't remember, but
probably you bought a lot of coffee.
Yeah, I bought a lot of coffee. I've actually bought like 4 of your shirts now. I think I only need one more to have all the different colors.
The full set, right?
Yeah, but it really does feel like if I just stumbled on your front door one day and needed a place to stay, that you guys would provide a bed for anybody. And I think that resonates through your business, and people can feel that, and that's why you have such a loyal customer base. And hopefully some of your potential customers can see this, and people that maybe have shopped here before but are still dabbling in other places, maybe they'll become diehard loyal Bear Arms customers. And
we would certainly appreciate that. But I don't get upset when folks say, I'm going to go check out some prices somewhere else. You spend 20 minutes with somebody talking about a firearm, and they're saying, well, I'm going to sleep on it or go somewhere else. That's fine, bro. Do you, okay? But I've been to other gun stores where they're like, what? Whatever.
Not going to find any better deals.
Right? Not going to. Or somebody's been, completely rude, and they're like, well, if you're not going to buy this, that's a $40 restocking fee. Like, what kind of business plan? Is that? And then anyway, but that's definitely not us here for sure. But yeah.
Well, yeah, like I said earlier, you guys just have this atmosphere. People just want to see you succeed, especially once they actually kind of start to learn a little bit about even just how you and Melissa conduct yourselves. And then, like I said, bringing your kids in the store all the time and bringing your dogs in the store all the time.
Yeah, the dogs. And the way this so if you've never been here before, it's a long retail space, and down the middle we've got like holsters and T-shirts and different various stands of product. But it's essentially like a long loop, like an Indy 500 track, and my kids have roller skates. So at any point in time, you'll come in here, there may be 2 dogs and then 2 kids on roller skates or a scooter scooting around in here. So it's kind of a unique environment for a gun store.
Yeah. But there's something about that.
Yeah, I think
it might seem less professional to some.
It's
but
endearing
more
to
personal.
some folks. It's for sure. It's 100% more. You're no longer like a corporate feel to it.
Right.
Like, I want it to look commercial. I want it to look good in here. But at the same time, when you see kids in here on roller skates and there's 2 dogs hanging out, it puts people at ease because we're normal folks, right? And doesn't matter.
Well, I think that's all I got for you. So if you want to give some like sales pitch spiel or where people can find you on social media and websites and all that stuff.
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook at Bear Arms Firearms. You can find us on Instagram at Bear Arms LLC. The 11th, which is in 5 days from now, if Cole gets all this homework editing done, we got a Freedom Fest on Saturday. National Guard will be out here with tactical vehicles. We have the Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, Indiana State Police will be out here as well. We'll have a delicious food truck out here. We'll have about 15 Corvettes out in the parking lot for some eye candy, and we'll have some sales going on as well. But wherever you are, whatever you do, be safe with your firearms. I would encourage you to get one if you don't have one, because they're super fun, whether it's for home defense or recreation. We'd love to help you out with that if you're around the area, but that's it, man. I appreciate the time. Thanks for asking me, because this was a good time, and I'm honored to be a part of it, for sure.
Guest number 4.
Yeah, guest number 4, bro. And if you haven't watched the other 3, watch the other 3. And then also watch his mission statement, too, because that kind of sets the tone for it. I'm glad he did that. I'm glad that you put that out there for sure, because that sets the tone for these podcasts. And it made me a little bit more comfortable, because I didn't know exactly what it is that I was walking into, or what you were looking for, what you wanted. And I watched that mission statement, and that was beneficial.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost like I've got my own little sales pitch to get people that want to do this podcast now. It's like I just tell them the story about my grandpa losing his arm and how I've heard that story secondhand. But wouldn't you like to hear a story like that firsthand from your great-grandfather from World War II? It's like, well, we can't do it for them, but we can do it for us and the veterans that we still have. So,
and this will live on the interwebs forever. But, yeah, that's one of the things I wish I'd have been smart enough to do with my grandfather, is ask him more questions.
Yeah, well, that great-grandfather of mine, he passed away when I was like 5. No 5-year-olds asking this kind of questions. So, now it's like if I could go back and watch a video of him telling his stories, and I've heard all these stories, him coming home, his family knew that he was wounded, didn't know the severity because of the lack of communication and technology back then, and he just showed up from a taxi cab one day, and he's 20 or 21 years old, missing an arm, I think his left arm, and his sleeve, the combat service stripes on the Army dress uniforms,
Mm-hmm.
is about that high. Every stripe is 6 months in a combat environment, and his left sleeve is tucked into his front pocket, and it's clearly nothing's there. It's like iron pressed flat, and my great-great-grandmother like collapsing to the floor, and like to be able to hear stuff like that from him, about how his mother fainted when she saw that her baby had lost his arm and stuff, like, we can't go back in time and get those videos from those guys, but we still have some of those guys that are around today, and I definitely want to get their stories while we have them. And I want to bring everybody. It doesn't matter what service, what branch, what experience, combat experience, no combat experience. It doesn't matter to me. Obviously, like, combat experience stories are what people want to click on, but I think every veteran has a story, and there's a lot more to the individual than just their military experience. But
after the echo, man, right? Like, what dudes experience after the shock gets cracked off. You know what I mean? Like, because it's an impact, and so often one of my biggest fears, if not the fear, wasn't getting shot and killed, getting taken, right? Because there's worse ways to go, but messing up, dude. Doing it wrong.
I think that's what everyone's most afraid of.
Right? Like
doing something wrong and getting somebody else killed.
Right?
And knowing that it's your fault.
And then the other was stepping off and getting zipped up before I even get started. You put in a lot of work, man. You don't want that one boot to hit the ground, then you're already gone. Like, you give me just a little bit of time. But I always wanted to be good for the dude next to me. Not just like, but I wanted to be really good. And we just, we alluded to that earlier about wanting to prove yourself and being there for your boys. But yeah, when you're in that moment, or it's that first time you're getting ready to do that vehicle assault to take this dude down, and it's the first one you're doing, you're all amped up, and you're rehearsing over and over in your mind. Okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. What's the contingency for that? And you're replaying it over and over again before you actually roll up onto the car. And the last thing you want to do is mess up. So you can have, and my former boss said, you can have that moment of, oh shit, it's going to happen, right? This is it. But as soon as you get there and that door cracks, you better be on business. Like, you can have that oh crap moment before you show up, but when you get there, it's time to do work. And that's pretty true.
Yeah. Well, getting just stories like that. I'm going to branch out too. Speaking of expansion plans, with this podcast, I want to do, like, not just military veterans. I want that to be the core of the guests that I have on the podcast, but I want to have fire service veterans, law enforcement veterans. I would like to have war veterans' kids and spouses, and the complete whole package picture.
The spouse thing for sure, because my wife did so much at home that allowed me to be gone for so long for so many different things, and I didn't have to worry about any of it. So I can't imagine coming from a place where, either my marriage wasn't solid or, I just had a crappy person in my life. I didn't have any of that problem. I was able to go to a school, know that my bills were getting paid, know that my kids were taken care of, and that I was going to have a home that was complete when I got back. Right, so I could totally dedicate myself to the training and not have to worry about anything else. Right, I could be mission focused and not be here and worried about my family 7,000 miles away.
So this is kind of an interesting thing that kind of goes along with that. We can wrap this up with this topic, but the topic of sacrifice. And you're always thanked for your service and for your sacrifice and stuff as a veteran. And I think it was Tom Spooner, who was a former, he was in the 82nd, and he went to Special Forces, and then he got into Delta Force. And he gets thanked for his service all the time. He's a more well-known veteran in the community, and he's just like, man, I don't know why people thank me for my service and sacrifice. He's like, I wasn't sacrificing anything. If you want to thank someone for their sacrifice, go thank my wife or my kids. It's like, I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I would like to see my kids more. I'd like to be around my wife more, but I'm doing the exact job that I want to be doing with the exact people that I want to be doing it with.
Yep.
And I signed up to go do this. She knew what she was getting into, but she didn't sign up. She didn't sign my name to have me go off.
Nope.
It was like so. And it was kind of interesting. It's like, yeah, you are sacrificing time with your kids and your wife, but really, when it comes down to the core, when you have to go away from them to do what you feel is your calling, then are you really sacrificing that much? Or
they do, 100%. 4 kids is no small thing. Running a gun store when you have no idea about guns is no small thing. And the amount of time and amount of hours that she goes into being, because she had homeschooled for a while too, but she was a school nurse, she was a counselor, she was a mom, she's a wife, she's a friend, she's all these things to tie things down at home. So 100%, Spooner's 1,000% right.
Ooh, looks like you got mail coming in.
But she allowed me to do all those things that I signed up for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Maybe we can have her on the podcast
Yeah,
someday.
for sure. And you probably get a lot of views because she's a smoke show. But
she's a nice lady.
Yeah, very nice lady. And but yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, dude. I had a really good time.
Yeah, right on. I
Awesome.
appreciate being on.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Right on.
All right.